everyone, and welcome to the Competition Law podcast of the Jindal Digest for Competition and Innovation Laws. Today, we have with us Ms. Ravina Sethia. Ms. Sethia is presently an associate at Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas & Co. with the Competition Law team. She has completed her LLB from Jindal Global Law School and later pursued her LLM from University of Cambridge, where she was a Pratibha M. Singh and Wolfson College Scholar. Thank you for joining us today, Ravina.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so the topic for today's discussion is competition law regulations in digital markets. So, as we all know that the Competition Act 2002 is a little bit older right now, and the whole legislation was drafted on the lines of traditional markets and the idea of how normal stores and normal markets work. So, it never envisaged the idea of platform and online forums. So, given this situation, what do you think whether the existing competition law framework is adequate to tackle the new challenges that come with digital markets?
I think that's a very well posed question. I think that if you look at the way at least the Indian Competition Act is structured, it's an extremely wide frame. For example, it says that you will curb or you will make it illegal to have abuse of dominance. Dominance is defined in a very broad way. Markets can be defined in a very broad way. Even if you look at anti competitive agreements, if you look at just section 3.1 standalone, it says that you will not enter into an anti-competitive agreement. Then you can go into like vertical or horizontal if you look at the specific section subsequently. But the wording of the legislation itself is quite wide. So I think you need some amendments definitely, but you don't really need a new regime completely to cope. And I think the present regime has a 70% capability if applied correctly. Now, where are the actual loopholes and where is the gap coming in here from? I think the first thing is that when you look at tech markets, like you rightly said, the regime initially was introduced for more traditional markets. We were looking at crops, grains, cement, coal, these were traditional things where you saw someone's market share. There were a couple of normal companies and you would be able to assess in a very clear manner who's dominant, who's not. Here's a tender, here's how it was awarded, etc. Today, you have made a gradual shift to an industry or rather a world where data is your prime commodity. It is the users who are being traded in a way. We are the commodities, our attention is the commodity. And you're looking at these organizations that are multinational, that are working in such varied manners, from cloud data and computing to servers to actual apps to actual software development, etc., and the aftermath. So they are so all encompassing that no regime in the world was really made to look at it in a holistic way. So the gap really exists in understanding how to tackle these entities. And what we can really do is increase our own understanding and the regulators' understanding of such data-driven platforms, the way e-commerce works, the way we look at the tech industry as a whole. The other lacuna that exists not just in the Competition Commission but competition laws everywhere is that we've always looked at competition law in a very traditionally geographical manner. If you look at the EU also, they don't go beyond the EU when they come to actually enforcing. They may consider the market to be worldwide, but their remedies are always EU specific. The same thing applies in India. We will never impose a remedy that goes beyond our territorial borders, because that's how we look at the idea of sovereignty, right? Which is in a territorial manner. But today, if you're looking at big tech companies, they are global in their nature. They don't stop in India. They are controlling using servers and companies which are based in various jurisdictions. They're controlling other jurisdictions. So when you have a very traditional geographical way of looking at competition law and enforcement, you will fall short. And what you really need is global cooperation amongst all these entities, maybe a global level body that will sit and actually consider each and every company in a specific manner and then think of things that they can do which will have a global impact. Because the stuff these companies are doing is not restricted to one jurisdiction. It is worldwide. So there is no reason why one specific enforcer should look at it in a different manner than the other. The concerns are broadly the same. right? So we require two things really. We require, one is geographically looking at it broadly. Second thing we require is technical experts and that expertise to really be able to examine these markets. And beyond that, I think we just need a more robust mechanism to review and enforce. But that's just a generic thing for every market. But for these markets, I think these are the two broad things we need, and not a complete overhaul of the regime.
Yes, I completely agree with you, Ravina, because we can see that all these big tech firms like Amazon, Google, Facebook, they're being prosecuted all across the globe and not just any one jurisdiction because of how wide their ambit is currently. So, as we know, in a lot of new jurisdictions, there's a new concept of strategic market status or the SMS status. This is replacing the dominant position category in a lot of antitrust legislations currently in terms of the entire digital market scenario. So, can you shed some light for all of us on this shift in defining the terms?
Okay, I feel like a teacher, so please stop me if I'm being very preachy. But see, the concepts are, and like, I'm really sorry. I used to do competition moods as a student, so I became that person who would write on the blackboard and like understand it for myself from my domestic and international competition moods. Um, so just to explain dominant position, and for those people hopefully listening who probably don't know, the way dominance is defined in economics, is a position of strength or market power which you have to exercise in a market, where you have the ability to act independent of your suppliers, your competitors, and eventually even your customers. So when you define dominance in that way, the key word you look at is to act independently. And that's such a high threshold if you look at it. I may have market power, but at the end of the day, I also need my consumers. I also need to see what my competitors are doing. I may be influenced by them, but acting independent of them is not easy. And it's a very, very high threshold to meet, right? It's only really traditionally big companies who've been able to actually meet that threshold of dominance and have actually been prosecuted for then therefore the abuse of that dominance. So traditionally when you approach a competition law case, the way it really works, just to take even two steps back from dominance, is you first look at a relevant market. A relevant market is defined in two parts. One is the product and one is the geography, right? So first you look at what exact product is this company in, what does it do? So for example, if I am making beverages, you will see where are my markets, where am I actually active? Is it aerated, non-aerated? Even in aerated, you will see which is the narrowest possible definition I can be put into, right? So it could be dark colored aerated drinks if you think that that is not substitutable with light colored aerated drinks. So it depends on the way that particular product is looked at by consumers, by competitors, and how it's received, right? So now if I have defined the market in this like black colored aerated drinks market, then I look at the geography. Now the geography need not be countrywide. It can be city-wide, it can be region-wise, it can even be sector-wise. Like if you look at an airline, Bombay to Delhi will be one market because it's one sector. So similarly, you define a geographic market. Once you've done this assessment, then you see who are the players here. That's then your step two to check dominance, right? In that particular black cold drink market in Delhi, right? So now I will check who are the other players. Now in that I will see, is there any one player who has the ability to actually act independent of everybody else, right? So can Coca-Cola today market and price its products irrespective of what a competitor is doing, what consumers want? And only when you come to that, it doesn't matter if Coca-Cola even has 90% market shares, right? Because market shares are not the only way to look at it. You will look at whether or not the conduct itself is independent or influenced. When you meet that high threshold, then step 3, this is also not where it ends. Then step 3 is to check whether Coca-Cola is doing something which actually abuses that dominance. And what is that abuse? You will see whether Coca-Cola has actually entered into any agreement which benefits itself to the detriment of its competitors, its consumers, its suppliers, etc., which distorts competition in its favor. Has it priced its products so high that it is a detriment to consumers and other competitors can't meet it? Has it done actions which would lead to a reduction in innovation in that market? And various other aspects. So it's only when you look at all these things, that is when you will come to assess whether Coke has actually abused its dominance. Now, this is your traditional, very lengthy process. It is, imagine, like 3,000 times lengthier than the time it took me to explain it to you. Now you look at SMS or strategic market status, right? In digital markets, if I were to go by the normal abuse of dominance, you can just imagine how long it would take me to even figure out what the market is. Because today you have big tech companies like Google and Apple and Facebook, etc., that are present in so many spheres that we don't even have an idea about. Traditionally, that yes, Apple manufactures smartphones and it has iOS devices, but today its reach is a lot more. I think it's even in smartwatches. You will look at iPads, you will look at earphones, you will look at chargers. I mean, you name it and they're there, and there are so many other hidden markets that they don't even advertise. So if I were to go into specific markets today, it would take me centuries to come up with a dominance, let alone abuse of dominance assessment. So a strategic market status in digital markets has been developed by, I think it was the CMA in the UK first. The EU also has something similar now, and it's only been developed last year. It was very recent. The idea is to see whether there is any particular entity in a particular product market which has significant market power, right? And the threshold when you say significant market power is already a lot lesser than acting independently from somebody, right? And you have to see whether this particular entity has a strategic position in the market. So you're not seeing whether they've actually distorted competition, whether they have the market share and all of that. You're just seeing, based on your assessment of what you think is a strategic market position, you are going to say, I have identified X player. And now the way it's envisaged by at least the CMA and the EU is that once they've identified this strategic market player, this person will be treated like a gatekeeper of that particular product market. And then they will have to maybe follow certain higher thresholds or maybe enter into dialogues with regulators with respect to whatever their actions are. And then accordingly, in a more collaborative manner, they will try to ensure that whatever the product or service being offered is going to be offered at a more fair and reasonable term to people. So maybe the status is, I don't know, it's my guess that maybe they are envisaging SMS to be similar to, someone producing the essential facility doctrine. So for example, in medicines, if you see, if I am manufacturing a particular drug and my drug is essential for you to even use and make a better drug, then I am giving you something which is an essential facility. Then the requirement on me is to give it to you on a fair and reasonable and non-discriminatory basis. So I think they are trying to transport that concept into these players where the obligations will be similar, but the way to assess may be slightly even lower as a threshold. Now, we don't know what the particular aspects they're going to consider are, but a good guess to make is that it's going to be similar to dominance, where you look at market share, you look at conduct, etc. But you, while considering the same aspects, you will not look at independence, but you would look at a strategic position. So that's the real difference here. But we still have to wait and see how it's actually going to be implemented in real life. Maybe what we're hoping is not how it is, and it actually falls short of what we've been promised. But we'll only know that once we see an actual case which involves an entity defined so.
Yes, that's completely correct, because this is still a very nascent topic to discuss for now. So coming to India, so we have really trending cases like the WhatsApp privacy policy case and the Go Ibibo and Make My Trip case, where all these platform markets are being under scanner of the CCI currently for abusing their dominance. So what do you think? Like, this is a very guess question, right? So what do you think? How is the CCI going to proceed with these cases, and like looking at how CCI has been dealing with such cases in the past?
Okay, so firstly, I think these cases have come up on the forefront. I think WhatsApp especially is something really interesting because the CCI took cognizance itself. Nobody came and complained about the privacy policy. They noticed it. They saw another jurisdiction was already looking into it. I think it was Germany. And then they decided to follow suit and look into the privacy policy. So that itself is a great step forward, because it shows that they are trying to, buck up, and they are trying to consider these tech markets and what's really happening. Make My Trip and Ibibo is also interesting because it is a case where a complaint was definitely, lodged. But at the same point of time, the CCI has given an interim relief to Tribo and I think it's Fab Hotels, the other two entities, which, were on the receiving end. So even till the CCI comes up with its final decision, Make My Trip Ibibo will have to actually list these, hotel chains on its website, which I think is a really, really huge step forward, because the CCI has decided that we are not going to waste time. We know we may take time to investigate, but we will give these people relief in the meantime. And I think that is just really exceptional for a regulator to do and take cognizance of. Even if you forget these two, I mean, today, if you look at Google, recently CCI has launched a third investigation against it, which is on licensing of Android for smartphones. So it's really showing that the CCI is, in fact, trying to take steps forward. How will these cases move now? That's question number two. If you look at any of the opposite parties, be it WhatsApp, be it Facebook, be it Make My Trip, be it even Google, they don't stop at all till they've exhausted every single legal remedy. You can even look at Flipkart, you can look at Amazon, any case, Monsanto, even if you look at traditional cases, right? These companies, they mean business, they are big, they care about their reputation. So they are not going to stop. They're not going to just accept anything CCI tells them to do. They're going to fight every step of the way. You saw Make My Trip and Ibibo did file a writ, but it was unsuccessful. Google filed a writ literally last week. This week is when the hearing happened and the order came out, where they said that the CCI had leaked the DG report, right? And then they in fact came to a compromise where they said that we will continue with it, but it sets a tone for the CCI that, these people are not going to stop in any case. WhatsApp also went all the way up to the High Court. Sorry, they didn't stop. Definitely, Flipkart and Amazon went up to Supreme Court, but, again, they said that the CCI will actually have cognizance and they will be able to look into these matters. So that's their thought process all the time, right? Which is why these cases are not going to be solved very, very simply. They will take time. They will require a lot of patience and perseverance by the CCI to actually come up with even an answer whether or not these companies have in fact abused their dominance. I mean, if you look at it, the CCI has not even made its determination. Yet these companies get so angsty about it because they really dread that type of damage that will come to their reputation. And they really want to try to protect themselves at no barring cost. So that's going to be the issue. And I think it's because of this nature of these players, and it's not something new with big tech that you see. It's every player from the history of time in any case that you look at. I mean, even in cases where there was a cartel and a leniency, like the beer cartel, for example. I mean, the investigation began in 2018. Everybody admitted to being in the cartel, but the order still took till literally last week to actually be published, right? Which is 2021. So we are taking 3 years where people are giving us the evidence and confessing to the crime also. So I think the fate of these cases is really unknown. We don't know what the CCI will come up with, but the one guaranteed thing is that the answers will not come soon. And the only way to make the system more robust is to make it a bit more collaborative. So these companies are not always up in arms against a regulator, and they themselves want to work with the regulators to find answers.
Yeah, and I think also the fact that in EU, so many of these big tech players have been, levied fines against us, they're actually really scared because the costs are abundant for them when it comes to paying all these fines and monetary damages. So now we'll move on to our last question for today, which is related to the merger control regime for digital markets. So in retrospect, I think a lot of regulators regret the fact that of the entire Facebook Instagram merger, which has made Facebook even more stronger than anything back in the day, right? So given the decision in the Facebook Instagram merger as an example, what do you think should be the next step forward for regulators in terms of merger control for digital markets? And also, like recently in India, there's the CLRC report which suggests certain measures such as a deal value threshold. And last week for the ASSOCHAM conference, Mr. Ashok Kumar Gupta also stated that new legislations, new amendments are in order for the competition law merger control regime. So, what do you think, and how can these changes actually help the entire scenario?
So I think the CLRC report was a great starting point, because the CLRC was formed by people who are in the profession day and night, apart from government officials. So it really helped because, the regulators were able to see true problems and really address them. So I think one thing which is, yes, deal value thresholds, which is being proposed and I think was accepted in the bill also, is really phenomenal. That will really make sure that a change in thresholds means more and more deals come under the spectrum. A second sort of solution could be mandatory filing of combinations that involve certain big tech companies. For example, if you use the SMS threshold in India, then any company which has been defined to have that strategic impact must necessarily notify a merger. So that will ensure that any future deal that they enter into is thoroughly reviewed, even if it doesn't follow a specific threshold or not, right? Another solution, and I think a very important one, looking at Facebook, Instagram also, is that we need to have a global review, which is a joint review. We cannot really continue reviewing transactions on a territory specific basis, right? Because in this case, what happens is that people try to pursue things with a specific regulator and they try to get out of commitments, they try to get out of more stringent terms. But if you have a review on a more global basis, where one or two representatives from key jurisdictions meet and they assess that merger together, keeping in mind whatever specific geographical concerns there are, we may come up with faster and more robust mechanisms to actually curb certain mergers, which later may prove to be detrimental for consumers and other competitors and innovation at large. Another important thing I think is to have technical experts who are able to not just do sector specific analysis, but are also able to look at big tech companies one by one in a more streamlined and effective manner. For example, you have a group of people that are purely dedicated to looking into Apple. You have a group of people purely dedicated into Google, into Facebook, into maybe Microsoft or any other company that you think falls under this threshold. That way, those people will have the expertise of knowing how a particular company functions, purely and properly. And I think that will lead to better solution making. Today, if you see, the worst thing we can do in our Competition Act is to break up a company. However, breaking up companies like this is not going to be the solution, because nobody really knows the impact of that breakup. Today, somebody has servers sitting in Ukraine which are controlling things happening in India. The management of a company is sitting in the US. So even if you break up that company on a territorial level, you are not going to be able to fathom, firstly, what you're doing. Secondly, you may cause more harm than good. And thirdly, it may be completely ineffective as a solution. As opposed to that, if you have people who know this company and its functioning in and out and exactly what is happening where, you may be able to come up with a better collaborative way of assessing any damages and get the company to agree to commitments beforehand, which I think will really help in an overall situation, right? Merger control can't simply be a form where you're just filling things blankly and someone is looking at it. Merger control for tech markets and for big tech companies especially needs to become a more collaborative effort, which should yield correct results which benefit consumers and don't harm these big companies also in the long run. Because our aim is not to punish them, but our aim is to regulate them in a way that benefits each and every one of us. So I think we should look at that perspective, and then the solutions will come automatically.
Thank you so much for shedding a lot of light on this, Ravina. I think that's the end of the segment today, and we really thank you. It was lovely having this conversation with you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time.